Hello, friends, and welcome to the Mythological Africans podcast, where we read and talk about stories from African mythology and folklore. I am your host, Helen Tunde. We've had a lot of commentary and analysis for the last couple of episodes, so I figured we should return to what the MA podcast is really about, which is mythology and folklore. So this week, we will continue our foray into Ibrahim al-Koni's Majus, or the Animists, this time reading a story about the Oasis of Waw, and that's spelled W-A-W. Waw is a legendary oasis in Tuareg folklore, and it's a lost paradise, right? One of those places mentioned in folklore as accessible only to those it chooses to reveal itself to and their conditions attached to death. And in Tuareg philosophy, as described by the author in the book, there are two Waws. There is the Terrestrial Waw and the Celestial Waw. The Terrestrial Waw is any place of refuge, man-made or otherwise, from the harshness of the desert's innocent and yet unrelenting cruelty. The Celestial Waw is a place of unsurpassed beauty and abundance, populated by kind and generous people who will share everything with you on the condition that you take nothing with you when you leave. And to Tuareg people, the Celestial Waw is an example of an unattainable ideal, sought after by arrogant young men who eventually bow in humility before it and spend the rest of their lives contemplating the folly of their presumption. So al-Koni dedicates a whole chapter of the book to two different versions of the story of Waw, one of which we will read today. And in this one, a merchant finds and then loses the Celestial Waw because he broke the place's primary rule. Leave it as you found it. Take nothing with you. The admonition goes, Desert dweller, if the sky is merciful to you and Waw opens its gates for you, don't forget that you enter it nude, devoid even of the leaf Adam and Eve used when they realized they were naked. Forget that you have stumbled upon a treasure and keep the secret. Remember that a desire to return there is sinful because shy Waw must journey to the unknown to purify itself once it has sheltered a human being. The second traveler was a merchant who lost his way to the well during a trip to Zuvelia. He released his 3 camels to free himself of all encumbrances. Then, he left the caravan route and headed north, thinking it was a shortcut to the oasis. At that time, he did not understand the desert strategies when it decides to lead a voyager and invites him in. It uses his fear of thirst to deprive him of his reason. Once the voyager loses his mind, he falls into the trap, and the mirage leads him in the wrong, opposite direction. The traveler erred first when the desert's expanse scared him, and he feared he would get lost. His second error was to leave the caravan route and follow an unknown desert path, relying on his memory, not his mind. This unknown route led him to the unknown, and he never reached the oasis. Then he reached the moment when desert travelers free themselves from any sense of shame. The lost wayfarer faced the sun, stripped off all his clothes, knelt naked on burning rocks, and cried out desperately, "Oh Lord!" He fell on his face in the blazing badlands and journeyed to that other desert, to the unknown. Waw intervened, though, and he found himself in a cozy bed surrounded by pillows stuffed with feathers, cotton, and wool. The translucent, gleaming white walls were decorated with plentiful garlands of wreathen blossoms, and a number of men, whose eyes never stopped smiling, ringed his palate on one side, their enigmatic smiles, noble and forbearing. On the other side of his bed sat a group of beautiful young women, attired in their Fena's colorful garments. Birds outdoors sang joyous songs in the garden's grand labyrinth. When the traveler had fully regained consciousness, he heard water purling. He sensed that he had heard this enjoyable purling while he slept in the unknown, and had indeed experienced it before he was born. Someday, he didn't know when. This was the purling of water as it furrowed the earth, and the water's mischief as it quarreled with boulders, joked with growth, and flirted with rocks. How beautiful water's speech when it flows! How gorgeous its flow is, the eternal perpetual stream that God denied the desert. What could the desert have done to deserve this punishment? He listened for a long time to water's mischievous, mysterious language, then turned to the man nearest him to ask about the stream. But even before the traveler had opened his mouth to utter the question, the smiling man replied, "Yes, that's the immortal stream, the river." "The river?" The man nodded his turban. Then the traveler observed, "In the desert there are rivers too, ancient rivers. Those rivers dug wadis into its body like sage, painful wrinkles on the face of a venerable elder. Water runs through them only once every 100 years, or perhaps every 1,000 years, because the thirsty desert rushes to the wadi and swills down the skyscape. In the desert, a man would give his life if you showed him a wadi flowing with water. What did the desert do to be forbidden water and to deserve the sky's curse?" Without waiting for a reply, the merchant lifted his head and lamented wretchedly. "How miserable the desert is! How miserable!" Glancing vacantly at their calm, dignified faces, he added, "No one knows how much the desert's people suffer in hopes of winning a single visit to Waw. You have no idea what it means for a desert man to hear water purl as it chases through orchards, between rocks that its tongue has smoothed, and in groves it embraces with mischief and seduction. Water, water, how beautiful water is." The group's eyes shone with smiles and sparkled. 3 young servants carried in a silver tray with small gold cups filled with tea. They placed the tray on the lush carpet, and the merchant lifted his cup. He rotated it in his hand and inspected its gemstone mosaic of a slender singer dancing and leaning backwards in a seductive pose. He scratched the surface of the mosaic with his fingernail, and the gem's facets gleamed in the light. When he brought his face close to the cup to examine it, his nostrils were teased by the aroma of an amazing blend of wild herbs. He imagined he had previously encountered that mixture of fragrances, but did not know when or where. Perhaps that had been in the Red Hamada in the springtime, or in the Nafusa mountains. He sipped some of the nectar and experienced a slight dizziness, which was followed by a sense of serenity and relaxation. He remained under the drink's influence for a long time, but this inebriation did not slay the savage beast that had awakened in his breast. This bestiality had led him by the nose on a tour of the entire desert continent, from Gadames to Kano, from Timbuktu to Zuwalia, and from Tamanrasset to Queorian. He had not stopped traveling since his first trip, when he had accompanied his father 50 years earlier. Circulating between cities with ancient history, he had only seen their markets. Wherever he had traveled in the desert, he had only seen desert. He had not experienced springtime in Hamada. He had not enjoyed the wreathen blossoms as they opened after the rains. He had not delighted in the herds of gazelles when they grazed calmly and securely in the valleys. He had not observed the noble Barbary sheep on the heights of the central desert, even though he dined on their flesh daily. He dreamed of free-flowing rivers, but had never climbed the blue mountains at the limits of the southern Hamada to see how hard the mysterious peaks labor to collect rainwater, drop by drop, and form real rivulets that spill from high ravines there and pour into the lower valleys. He had not witnessed this miracle because his thirst was in his heart, not in the desert. It is absurd for a person in whom commerce's idol dwells, a person who venerates the market's clamor, to live in the desert, to savor the desert's symbols. So he forgot the river, and the savage beast of avarice woke within him when he saw the gold cup with its glittering mosaic pattern. The water's purling faded, and the river fled. The nightingales took flight and stopped singing. He heard the savage beast inside him howl. The mosaics on these goblets in Waw come straight from paradise. The moment merchants in Gadames learn the lost oasis has opened its gate to you, the value of these cups will climb sky high. You will negotiate and haggle, following the law of the market, till you reach your price and are fully compensated for your losses during the years of the economic depression. Ottoman pashas will pay any price once they learn these goblets come from the mysterious oasis. He drained the nectar from his cup and hid it in his pocket when those sitting there were not looking. Then he fell victim to a form of blindness and deafness that allowed him to see only the goblets and hear only their ring on the tray. He enjoyed a guest's traditional 3-day visit and prepared to depart. The smiling dignitary saw him to the gates of the wall around the oasis and bade him farewell hospitably and graciously. When this merchant left Waw, he had 3 cups in his pockets. These were decorated with heavenly mosaics of women entertainers. He spent his first night in a wadi bereft of trees. As he examined his treasure, the female vocalist winked at him seductively from the mosaic design, and the beast in his heart quivered as he gazed at her for a long time. He lit a fire to prepare himself a fine dinner with plentiful supplies that came from Waw's generous officials. He boiled gazelle meat and baked wheat bread in hot sand beneath the fire. Then he rubbed his dry beard with good butter and animal fat. He had always liked to run his fingers through his beard to assure himself that its hair was well nourished and gleamed majestically. He had learned this practice from a cunning merchant who owned half the shops in Gadames and herds of camels in the Hamada. He slept without dreaming and continued his trip in the morning. He traveled for 3 days before he discovered the transformation and realized that the goblets had turned to brass. He did not believe his eyes and questioned his long experience trading gold and other metals in the markets of the oasis. Choked with rage, he went straight to Zuwalia's market, where he sought out the gold traders and closeted himself with an elderly merchant with whom he had previously done business. The old codger tested the goods with fire and returned the goblets to the merchant, remarking that they were brass. The female vocalist portrayed in a gemstone mosaic had become a wretched torch singer with no allure fashioned from lusterless beads. O desert dwellers, should Waw open its gates to you, be sure to leave naked, because you were naked when you entered there.